Well, it cost the U.S. more than 2,000 lives and $2 trillion. But now U.S. President Joe Biden says he is bringing the troops home from Afghanistan and America's longest war. The road ahead will be filled with challenges, including keeping a resurgent Taliban in check. But President Biden says the prolonged war is no longer aligned with American priorities. CNN's Kaitlan Collins reports from the White House.
An end in sight for America's longest war.
We went to Afghanistan because of a horrific attack that happened 20 years ago. That cannot explain why we should remain there in 2021.
President Biden announcing that he'll withdraw all U.S. forces from Afghanistan by September 11th, the 20th anniversary of the attacks that brought them there.
It's time to end America's longest war. It's time for American troops to come home.
Overruling warnings from the Pentagon, Biden chose a full withdrawal with no strings attached to the political conditions on the ground.
I'm now the fourth United States president to preside over American troop presence in Afghanistan. I will not pass this responsibility on to a fifth.
Biden spent months deciding whether to meet a May 1st deadline set by former President Trump. Now he must grapple with an intelligence assessment warning the Afghan government will struggle to keep the Taliban at bay.
There is a significant risk once the U.S. military and the coalition militaries withdraw.
Though Democrats who oppose the war applauded the move, lawmakers from both sides of the aisle questioned it.
Precipitously withdrawing U.S. forces from Afghanistan is a grave mistake.
I think any withdrawal that takes place in that country must be conducted in a manner that is coordinated among our military, diplomatic, and intelligence partners.
Biden made his announcement from the treaty room, the same place where President George W. Bush announced the first Afghanistan airstrikes in 2001.
The Taliban will pay a price.
That night on Larry King Live, then Senator Biden acknowledged the long road ahead.
It's a beginning, Larry. There's a long way to go.
And during his announcement, President Biden said he had actually spoken with President Bush the day before to let him know about the decision he was making. And then we later learned from the White House he also called President Obama as well to inform him of the decision to withdraw these troops. Kaitlan Collins, CNN, the White House.
Well, the troop withdrawal can't come soon enough for the Taliban. They want all foreign forces out by May 1st, a deadline agreed to by former U.S. President Donald Trump. CNN's Nick Paton Walsh is in the Afghan capital.
Yeah, I mean, the Taliban is the key dynamic here. As I said, they recently suggested they weren't even going to go to the peace talks in Istanbul that are a key part of the Biden plan here, and just recently suggested this morning that they've got 16 days for the Americans to entirely withdraw. As I say, they made these noises before, and many think they do need the legitimacy of transitional government here, as the US is suggesting, alongside the Afghan government, to keep aid flowing in when eventually get their hands on the levers of power. This country is struggling to keep its lights on, to feed itself at times, and if the Taliban want to control more of it as the actual government, in some ways they're going to need to deal with that. NATO said, as many expected, NATO allies can't really sustain themselves here without the US infrastructure and muscle, frankly. They'll be leaving at the same time too. And the Afghan government are the key real wild card in this. Strange to say that. They've been opposed to the dynamic of the peace process. They wanted elections first before a transitional government. But today there was a very tame and, I think, respectful statement from President Ashraf Ghani, who said he respected the decision and they wanted to make the transition as smooth as possible. This is a presidential palace that fully knows it faces a superior force in terms of the Taliban. They made statements about how they can keep them at bay. They're going to desperately want more assistance for their armed forces, presumably hope that US air power might be at their back possibly in the months ahead, or that's definitely not part of what Biden's proposing. Look, America's leaving this war, but the war doesn't end because there are no longer 2,500 troops here. It continues for the Afghans in a darker new phase where the insurgency that caused so many lives to be lost may now be calling the shots. So this is, you know, as you say, not something in the forefront of many American minds, and it'd be interesting to see quite how the world pays attention to it now the international presence draws down.
CNN's Nick Paton Walsh reporting there from Kabul, Afghanistan. NATO's Secretary-General says the troop withdrawal is not the end, but the beginning of a new way of working with Afghanistan. He says allies must turn from combat forces to diplomacy, economic tools and humanitarian aid.
Our drawdown will be orderly, coordinated and deliberate. We plan to complete the withdrawal for all our troops within a few months. Any Taliban attacks on our troops during this period will be met with a forceful response.
Now it is time to bring our forces home. We will work very closely together in the weeks and months ahead on a safe, deliberate, and coordinated withdrawal of our forces from Afghanistan. But even as we do that, our commitment to Afghanistan, to its future, will remain.
The U.S. Secretary of State also pledged to stand with the people of Afghanistan, especially those who helped U.S. personnel. But he dodged a question about Afghan citizens seeking asylum in the U.S.